Hello, welcome to the Greystone Manor podcast. I'm your host, Pro, and this is Affirmations During a Difficult Time. I wrote a blog about this that released on the website yesterday. I'll be sure to link that below because over on the blog, I tend to be more concise. I also gave some examples of affirmations that anybody can use during a hardship. Here on the podcast, I do want to be a little bit more nuanced. I want to talk more about my experience and just how I stepped into affirmations since I didn't really have enough room, space, or time for the blog. Another thing, I don't have a video of myself typing up this blog and the quick notes for the podcast because this hit me late at night. So I was trying to fall asleep, and in that weird sleep kind of being awake stage, it hit me. Like I started getting like these affirmations running through my head, and I was like, "Oh, that's exactly what I want to talk about." So I did write most of this on my phone from bed, and I just want to be able to express that affirmations might not come easy to everybody. It might sound easy, it might look easy from what we see online, but it's really not. So, my introduction to this may have been formally when I was getting into like the woo woo, witchy kind of witchcraft side of things, but this has actually been a part of my life since at least high school. When I was going through all of my old paperwork and bins of just nostalgia over the past few weeks, I found these old cards that I made up. And it was for a mixed media project in high school during one of my art classes. And on there, I had splattered watercolor painting. I had some intricate, detailed drawings that I did, and also a lot of cutouts from magazines of just like images that I really liked. And then I took newspaper clippings and created quotes, mostly quotes from like my favorite books, my favorite authors, anything that felt like inspiring at the time. And back then I was very much into Buddha and Buddhist quotes and stuff. And one of them is like, what you think you will become. So that was kind of plastered all over the place. Very cringy now looking back at it, but it's kind of nice to know my creative spark definitely came from inspired people or inspiration. So that's kind of nice. Well, fast forward a few years when I'm in therapy working on grieving the loss of one of my close friends who passed suddenly. Oh, sorry, my cat was making a really weird noise. But yeah, when my friend passed suddenly, I didn't know how to handle it. So I turned to Pinterest and I was looking for like each day will get better and better as you go, or it is okay to be sad because I am still living on earth, and just kind of simple things, things that were a little bit more generic, as I would call, because most of them are like author unknown. It's not like, oh, it came from this wise mind person or this spiritual person or from this book quote. So it was kind of helpful, kind of not. And when I brought it up to my therapist, he mentioned that that could also be seen as spiritual bypassing or just bypassing in general all of the deep rooted emotional feelings. So he helped me work on what we call supportive statements. So the supportive statement is meant to stop the negative thought happening. And then after we stop that negative thought, then we fill it in with an affirmation. So it was more or less to help me not spiral out of control, but also giving me a chance to still acknowledge the hardship before it spiraled. So I want to give an example. One of the thoughts that I had a lot back then was I should have been more attentive to calling my friend or texting them. And one of the support statements that I came up with is that thought isn't helpful right now. So when I say a support statement that my thought isn't helpful, I have to add the term right now after it because it's saying, hey, that thought is still valid, but not in this moment. And then after I do that supportive statement, I would fill it in with an affirmation, such as, each day will continue to feel lighter and lighter. And, going through this process over and over, it was able to help me get through each day. But when I was able to have time to be in therapy or write in my journal or even do like a voice memo just to get my thoughts out, I was still able to then discuss with myself that hard emotional feeling. So I would still be able to have a release. And I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people go through hard times, and some people, including myself, we can get so burnt out that it just doesn't even feel like you're living life anymore. Sometimes it feels like you're on autopilot. Sometimes you feel numb. Sometimes it feels like the world is burning all around you and you just can't even acknowledge it because you're feeling so much more deeper than what the person next to you is putting off. So I want to leave room for that because it is hard to get through this and it is hard to get to this point, and not everybody has the luxury of being able to get into therapy or even to find the right therapist. So I'm not giving this as therapy advice. I'm not licensed or practiced in that area. I just hope listening to this and some of my suggestions can help, which I would like to give at least one more. So the first one we said, that thought isn't helpful right now. And then I said, each day gets lighter and lighter as my affirmation. Well, a second one is that I was bashing on myself by saying I should have just driven to that state, which my friend lived almost half the country away from me. But I was like, I should have just started driving when I felt that feeling. So then I would backfill with a supportive statement to stop that negative thought. And I said, that thought is irrational. I'm going to let it go and think of something else. So saying something kind of a little far fetched, such as, oh, I should have started driving the moment I thought that there was a problem, that's irrational. That wasn't possible for me to do, especially living so many states away from this person. So I want to acknowledge that that thought is irrational. However, I'm going to let it go and think of something else. And so then I would backfill with an affirmation of, the people come into your life for a reason. So I would use that affirmation, people come into your life for a reason, so that it made me feel a little bit better about the situation that happened. And over time, like at first, a lot of this stuff felt very corny. It felt like very you must follow this step and then this step and then this step. It felt weird and it was very jarring at first. But the more that I practiced it every day, like talking to myself in the mirror, sometimes talking to myself in a voice note, writing it down in my journal, it really helped. And then even talking about it to some of my other friends and even my family members, it really started to become a way of changing how I think of things. So, last podcast, I talked about how my partner and I lost a close friend to a motorcycle accident. And even though I was sad, it was weird because my brain started automatically acknowledging the negative self-talk and the statements, filling it in with a supportive statement and then an affirmation. And it was so weird that my brain automatically started doing that. And I think that just comes to a few years ago. I had such a heavy hand of practicing it over and over and over again. And this time around, I really feel like I've been able to process the grief a lot better. I've been able to have some harder conversations and discussions around that person passing. And for some reason, even though I can still feel it inside of my entire body and my chest mostly, there's like a sense of peace and calm and just acknowledgement that everything will be okay eventually. So I really hope that kind of helps other people thinking of it, um, especially like through that thought process. So I would like to use this part of the podcast to suggest making your own affirmations. I really like going to Pinterest for like a baseline of ideas, but I really think it's important that if we come up with phrases and sayings that are more personal to us. So, my one friend, they live they live overseas, and they were the first person to tell me that it's like small baby steps, and then we turned it into one chunk at a time. And it just, for some reason, because I've heard them say that so many times over and over again, I kind of adopted it as like one of my own affirmations: one small baby step at a time and one chunk at a time. And that has helped me so much because I'm talking about, at least in the podcast, in the beginning, or in the beginning of this podcast and the blog, I'm talking about like grief and loss and like very heavy topics. But there are moments in my day where I feel so overwhelmed. It's like none of the dishes were done, the laundry's behind, the pets need cleaned up. I mean, even just thinking about brushing my teeth and taking care of my hair and finding clothes, it sometimes gets overwhelming, and I find myself turning to that one affirmation my friend said so many years ago. And I keep saying, one step at a time. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to work on this. And then I'll get to the next one. But I just focus, boom, one step at a time. And I sometimes find myself saying that mentally to myself inside my head. There are moments where I'll say it out loud too, like under my breath, like one step at a time, or we're working on this right now. We're not worried about the next step. We're just on this step right now. And so if you come up with like your own personal affirmations, especially something that you may have heard in passing with one of your friends, your family members, maybe even a stranger that you heard on the street, it's just, those can be more personal and they might just stick a little bit better, or maybe you might remember them a little bit better during a difficult time. So I definitely want to encourage, maybe take some time to come up with at least 3 affirmations that you know will help you out. And if you feel like those affirmations are really silly and corny, maybe come up with a supportive statement that you say before you fill in the affirmation. And like, the supportive statement is meant to help stop the spiraling thoughts. So like, another supportive statement. I'll give a few examples. It's okay to make mistakes. Another one would be, I have to take risks in order to grow and be free. And another supportive statement would be, it's okay that I had that thought or image in my head, and it doesn't mean anything. I just have to pay attention to it and move forward. So if you want, find a supportive statement that acknowledges the deep rooted spiral, fear, or thought, and then fill it in with the affirmation afterwards. And you might just be able to make it through that next task or that difficult thought or even that hard day at work or in school. So I hope that helps. I hope this gave a little bit more information than the blog post. But with that, I'm going to get going because I think my next idea is starting to hit. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.